Hey guys, it's time for me to talk about the season finale of Scandal, and that was a doozy. So yeah, oh my God. Shonda Rhimes knows how to just bring it in its last episode. There was a lot going down. I think a lot of things they tied up really quickly, but I think it still had the impact that you wanted. Like I was literally on the edge of my seat for the whole entire episode because I just didn't know what bombs were going to be dropped, what was going to happen. So you're kind of just waiting with anticipation throughout this whole hour. And at the end of last week's episode, we end with this bomb counting down 59 minutes. So, of course, we're assuming that this next episode is going to take us through those 59 minutes when this bomb is going to go off in this church. And the bomb pretty much goes off in the first 2 minutes before the title card scandal even comes up. So I was like, what? So the president's like, is there a bomb in this building? Are we sure there's a bomb in the building? Boom, the bomb goes off and it's crazy town. Okay, the one thing I did like was that Cyrus was starting to have some second thoughts about, letting all those people die as Fitz is reading back like his eulogy. And you can see that Cyrus is kind of like, maybe I should say something. And Jake calls him and he doesn't do anything. And then all of a sudden we see the news breaking and people are running out of this church. And of course, Jake tells or somebody leaks the information that there's a bomb in the building. And this is when the president goes into the bunker. Well, not the bunker, but he goes into like the situation room where they're all discussing like what should we do next. And this is when he's like, "Are you sure there's a bomb in the building? Are you sure there's a bomb in the church? Because if there's not, we're gonna look like idiots." Boom, the bomb goes off. So of course, what this does is it completely helps Sally because Sally was there and she comes out and Leo wastes no time using this opportunity to help her and he puts like the soot on her face and he's like rips off her rips part of her jacket and he's like, this is your moment, this is your moment to go in there and like act like the Jesus, disciple that you are basically and start rescuing people. So exactly what she does. And of course the cameras are there to videotape all of it and she pretty much looks like a saint. And they're all like, well, there it is, guys. We just lost the election. And of course, Cyrus is like, we just lost the election today. Like, that's it. So the first half of this episode was pretty much them conceding to the fact that Sally Langston was going to be the new president, and all the polls were saying she was going to be, and it was a lock. And even the president was like, I can't believe this, I'm toast. And Olivia was devastated because, of course, this is her job, and she knows that it's because of her mom why this is all happening. So they pretty much are ready to say their concession speech, and everything is about to, go down. When all of a sudden, Jerry Jr., goes down for the count. He coughs up blood. Blood starts coming out of his nose. He collapses, goes to commercial, come back. All of a sudden, Olivia's standing at this podium and she's saying that he died of meningitis. What? And then they're saying that there was this the serum was stolen from the CDC and that they're tying it back to Maya Pope and that she killed the president's son. I was like, what? I was like, shut up. This is not really happening. They did not just kill the president's son. And of course, when this happens, it's a whole turnaround. And of course, he's going to get sympathy votes and he's going to be reelected. I cannot believe the show went there, but the show went there. And earlier on in the episode, Olivia tells Fitz the truth about what happened to Melly. So Fitz now knows that Big Jerry raped her. And at first he's like, no, you're lying. That's a lie. And then he literally is like, I know who my father was. And the scene that he has with Melly is a great scene. And he basically just walks into the room. He doesn't say anything. He just stares at her and she looks at him and she's like, you know. And he's like, I know. And she's like, Olivia can't do anything right. So, in a way, this is sort of another Olivia moment saying, we're done. Because she cannot tell the president Fitz, that your wife was raped by your crazy father all those years ago, which is why she pulled away from you all those years ago, and then expect them to go live in Vermont and make jam. So she knows this is ultimately the end of this relationship again. And it just goes again to show that these two are never going to get together. And at this point, I am so fine with that. But it was a very nice scene that Fitz and Melly had. He walked into the room, he kissed her on her forehead, like on the top of her head, and he just put his head on her forehead. And it was just a nice moment. And she even says, I fought him off. Like I tried to fight. And it was such a good moment because that is the truth. Like she is not saying, I'm so sorry. She's just like, I tried, I fought, and like in that moment, I wanted none of that to happen. And of course, Fitz knows the truth that his father was sick and twisted. So it was again a moment that was nice to see Fitz humanized and just to see that that moment didn't get blown up into an argument and like they didn't salt that moment and they didn't make me hate Fitz. They made me actually appreciate his reaction to the news that he just found out. And I like that she said, I had a blood test taken. He's yours. He was always yours. He's not his. And Fitz says, I don't care. Like, it didn't matter if he was his father's. He was going to love his son anyway. So the fact that, halfway through this episode, he dies. I think, to be honest, like, I thought it was a very impactful moment. But I think had we been introduced to the kids a few episodes earlier where we started to get this a little bit of more of a bond and got to know a little bit more about Jerry Jr., I think that the death of him would have been more impactful. But I get it. They had to cut 3 episodes or 4 episodes because of Kerry Washington's pregnancy. So I know a lot of these storylines have been rushed this season, but I think that had they introduced him a little earlier and we got a sense of who he was, we got to get connected to him, see him bonding with his father or whatever, and then to see this moment get pulled out from under us, I think would have been a little bit more impactful. But I was still like, they killed his son? Crazy. So, of course, now all eyes are on Maya Pope. And this woman, again, is still prancing around, showing up in the hospital to see Rowan, and she's all like, what are you going to do, Olivia? What are you going to do? What you going to do, girl? Like, testing Olivia, like, are you going to hold me down? Are you going to hold me back? And it's like, no. And again, I don't know why Olivia doesn't be like, punch her mother out and get security in there pronto, but Olivia's mother walks away again, and she pretty much says, I could have killed your father, but I didn't. We both know I could have, but I didn't. And, she's like, I did all this for you, and, she's trying to make it sound like she's done all these things so that Olivia can get away from the president and she can be free and live her life. And it's like, Mama Pope, what is your deal? Why are you so hell-bent on killing the president? What is the bigger grand scheme in all this? Because we still really don't know. We know that she wants the money, but like, is that it? Like, they just have really not given us a lot of that information, which is a little bit frustrating. But it is what it is. And so, of course, we had Rowan recovering from his stab wounds thanks to Mama Pope. And he's quite nice to Olivia in this episode. And he's all like, I wish I could save the president's election for you. And she's like, no, you don't. Like, you hate him. And he's like, I'm not a fan of him, but I love you. And I would do anything for you. And so he chooses his words very carefully. And obviously, as we find out at the reveal at the end, which is that he is actually the one who poisoned Jerry Jr., and he is the one who set all of these wheels in motion so that we would blame it on Maya Pope and that President would feel indebted to him for catching Maya Pope and then would reinstate him as the head of B613, aka Command. Oh my goodness, people. So he is back in charge, which we all knew was his end game. He wanted to be back in the top chair, and that is exactly what he got. And he also got Olivia to concede and be like, this is all my fault. I'm the problem. I'm the scandal. I'm the one who needs to be fixed. And so she hightails it out of town with Jake on her arm. Now, here's the thing. Okay. So I have no problem with Olivia, and we all know she's pregnant, so she's gotta leave for bed. But I have no problem with her being like, "I'm the problem, I gotta go." But the fact that she packed up her place so quickly, I'm like, "Honey, ain't nobody can pack up their place that quickly." So I thought that was kind of hilarious. And then of course Jake, who doesn't seem to ever take no for an answer, shows up at her place and he's like, "What? You quit OPA?" And I actually like that Abby was like, "You don't get to quit. You don't leave us." And then she was like, "Just go back to your daddy or go crying to your daddy." And I like that she kind of ripped a strip off of Olivia a little bit there because it's like, you're quitting. You're not a quitter. What are you doing? So I like that she called her out on her BS. And then when Jake shows up at her place and he's like, "You quit OPA?" And she's like, "I'm the problem. I'm the one who needs to leave and I need to be handled, blah, 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 blah." And then, of course, he's like, "Take me with you," because he's a regular person now. He's not the head of B613. He's got no job. He's just a regular citizen. So he's just like, "I'll go with you, sure." And she even says point blank, "Thank God, I'm in love with another man. Like, stop it." And he's like, "It's okay. You're leaving everything behind, so you can leave him behind too. And I'll be right there with you." So, is this a new chapter in the Olivia Jake romance? I'm pretty much assuming so because I'm sure when the show comes back, it will not be a day later, it'll be months later. And these two will probably be in some sort of love affair. It is what it is. Sometimes, and it was funny because I was saying to a colleague of mine that, Olivia, it's not like Olivia can just go and date anybody. Because, I'm like, I'm so over Jake, I'm so over Fitz, but she can't date. Like, if we want to see Olivia dating, who's she going to date? She can't date anybody because she cannot introduce anybody into this lifestyle. And I don't want to see her lying to somebody in a relationship. So it's like, the lesser of two evils, Jake it is, I guess. I don't know. So I'm kind of over the tug and war, like the back and forth, the love triangle, all that. So if she ends up going with Jake and that's that, I'll be fine. But when they always love to have Olivia and Fitz in scenes together and they start playing that music, we all know what music I'm talking about, people. And it's reminiscent back to season 1 when they have that moment and they're like, "Just stand with me here for a minute," and they're just gazing in each other's eyes and that music is playing in the background. And then later on when they have that flashback scene, or he comes over to her apartment and he's like, "Just sit with me for 1 minute," and it is like one of the best scenes on Scandal ever. And they're just sitting on that couch, they're not saying anything, and their facial expressions are basically telling the entire story. So in this episode they started playing that music back and I was like, "Oh boy, here we go again, people." And they cut the music kind of quick in this one, but you got that same feeling. Like, that these two love each other. Like, that is just not even the point anymore. So the fact that she's leaving town to go be with Jake, not really be with him, but she's leaving and Jake is going with her, will be interesting. I like that Jake left David with a little treat, which was all these classified documents. And he basically left him a note saying, "Go get the bad guys." And hopefully this will obviously light a fire under David, and he's going to solve some crimes that need to be solved and put some bad people away. Of course, Adnan met her maker in this episode, thanks to Rowan, because we find out at the end that he did all of this so that Harrison would tell him where Adnan and Maya had their money trail so that he could track them down, which is how they ended up catching Maya at the end. And where's Maya? In the hole, people. That's right. 20 years in prison. Now she's back in the hole. Good, because that woman, she could wear a trench coat, but that woman, no good. Lock her up. So, of course, when Harrison goes to see Rowan and basically beg him to get Olivia back, this is when he starts to put two and two together and he realizes that Rowan is the one who killed Jerry. He realizes that he's the one who killed Adnan and that he's the one now back in charge of B613 because he did a solid for the president, but really he's the one who orchestrated this whole thing. And then Tom comes out ready to put a silencer on his gun, and does this mean that Harrison is toast? Probably. The man only gets 2 lines in an episode, so it wouldn't surprise me if they popped him a good one, or if they stuck him in the hole next to Maya Pope and 2 of them rot together. with this show, nothing would surprise me. So, speaking of surprises, Charlie left Quinn with a little treat for herself, and that was the location of Huck's family. Now, we all know that back in season 2, we got this very devastating backstory on Huck, which is how Olivia found him on the subway platform and he had a family and he basically had to leave them because he was put in the hole and he was never heard from again. So they obviously just assumed that he was dead. And he had a son and he had a wife, and that was the last thing that we knew of them. So in this episode, they go to this home and Quinn starts regurgitating the information that's in this document that Charlie gave her, and it's his wife and it's his child. And Huck freaks out. And he's basically like, why would you bring me here? Why would you do this? Never talk to me again. You're dead to me. Oh, but before this, they had a little business going on at OPA, which, I'm sorry. I don't care how much you want me to co-sign this relationship. It just does not work for me. I will say it felt a little less icky in this episode, but still, it is still icky. And Abby and Harrison walked in on them doing a little sucka business up in OPA, and I love how she was like, there was blood on the floor from Rowan, and she's like, did that turn you guys on? She's like, clean that up and clean this up. I loved how Abby had that reaction, because that is exactly what the rest of us are all thinking. So when they go now to the home of Huck's wife, he freaks out and he's like, basically, don't talk to me again, like, you're dead to me. And this leads us to a really great scene that Huck ends up having with Olivia. He shows up at her place and she opens the door and he was like, I wanted to knock, but I couldn't knock. And then she lets him in and he's basically like, me leaving or them thinking I was dead was the best thing that could have happened to them, because now nobody's chasing after them. Nobody's trying to get to them to get to me. And, they look happy and all this kind of stuff. And it was really, really sad because, I feel like Huck was a really good person and he loved his family. And then B613 destroyed him. They tore a part of his soul. He can't really love anything anymore without it being like sick and twisted. And the fact that he got some happiness from that family and then seeing them again just really literally ripped his soul out, and that just let him hit rock bottom again. So I really enjoyed that scene that they had, Olivia and him had together. And then finally she basically just like coddles him and she takes his head and puts it in her head, like in her arms. And it was kind of like a really sad moment because they have gone through so much together, Olivia and Huck, and there came a point where she was terrified of him, rightfully so. And I think that they've gotten back to that point where she can trust him again and he feels he can go to her and let her know how he feels. So that was a really great scene. There was a lot of Olivia and her father moments in this episode where you could tell that he was, again, just trying to reiterate that he does love his daughter, but we all know that he is so underhanded and he's doing everything he can to manipulate the situation for himself. So the fact that he basically got what he wanted, he got his daughter out of the country, he got to be back in command mode and in charge of B613, and Maya's locked up in the hole, and the president thinks that he's got his loyalty. It's just crazy. Cray. I did enjoy this episode. We didn't really get to see any more of Sally Langston after the whole church stuff, but her fate was pretty much sealed after they sadly killed Jerry Jr. And to know that it was Tom who did it, who pricked him, Tom! I'm shocked. I mean, I know you work for Command, but damn, that's cold. So nobody on this show is a good person. It is just devastating. And again, Melly had another great scene when she pretty much says that she neglected her son. And part of it was because she was afraid of who he could have been in terms of being Big Jerry's son, but he was always her son. So the fact that she, wasn't really there for him, she feels torn up about that. And at the end, when they're having that montage, and they're playing, I believe it's Papa Was a Rolling Stone, and Fitz literally, Cyrus is like, they're calling Florida, you're gonna win, and it's all like great news. And Fitz is just like literally walking through the Oval Office like a zombie, and he gets into the room and he collapses on his knees, and he's like, his hands are shaking. He tries to pour himself a glass of scotch or brandy or whatever, and then he collapses to his knees, and he's just like, he's done. He wins the election, but again, did he really win the election on his own merit? No. And Melly comes in and she's like, Fitz, it's going to be okay. And what does he say? Where's Olivia? It's just like, again, she's never too far away from his thoughts. That's all I can say. And these two are a doomed romance. It's just tragic all around. So I think it was a good season finale. I enjoyed it. There were a lot of quiet moments, but then there were a lot of moments where you're just like, is this really happening? Did they really just blow up the church in the first 2 minutes? And I also really like that scene between Leo and Cyrus in the office, where he was basically like, oh, you told me, he's basically, Cyrus is conceding, and he's like, if there's any piece of your soul that you still have, like, hold on to it, because this place will destroy you. So that was a nice little moment between these two rivals, and I enjoyed that. I really enjoyed Leo this season. I thought he was a great addition to the landscape, and he was definitely just equally a self-serving bloodsucker, like trying to use every opportunity to his advantage, which I think is awesome, because that is how politics works, right? Even after the church blows up, Olivia storms into that room and she's like, get out, you need to get into the press room, because like you need to look presidential, and da 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 da, and because Sally's going to be out there pleading her case on the battlefield. So get out there. It's like everything is just like a political maneuver, and it's fun to see all the chess pieces moving around, let's just say. So even like, I loved when Rowan said, I told her I wasn't going to harm a head on his body, but that didn't exclude his family. Oh my God. This show, I enjoy it so much. Well, let me know what you guys thought of this season finale. We're going to be off until, I'm assuming, September, October, most likely October. Kerry Washington will have delivered her baby, so we'll be back to seeing full shots of Olivia prancing down the Oval Office in her fierce outfits, I have no doubt, and some romping around scenes, I have no doubt. So that'll be exciting. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode. If you enjoyed it, I did. And I think it was, it ended the way that the season needed to end. And it left room for a lot more things in the future. All right, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye.